Wreaths across America ceremonies were held in Augusta earlier today, with hundreds of wreaths being laid down at veteran cemeteries. Wreath placement ceremonies took place at Central Maine Veterans Cemetery and Maine Veterans Memorial Cemetery, with the latter hosted by the Togus VA Medical Center. Volunteers were each given 6 wreaths to lay down at designated graves. Volunteering veterans say that the event allows those who came before to be recognized for their sacrifice.
It's what we do. It's what we signed up for. We know what we have to do, and we respect that these veterans here before us, what they laid down their life from way before World War I and II, all the way up through until today, and we still got veterans out there sacrificing daily.
It's just trying to remember those people that have sacrificed so much. We owe so much to so few.
Over 500 designated wreaths were placed to honor the fallen soldiers.